I once believed love could endure anything. But when your wife's career becomes her lover, you're left wondering where it all went wrong. I watched as she climbed the corporate ladder, while I sank deeper into the shadows. Her smiles faded, replaced by cold, calculating stares. And me? I became a ghost in our own home. The night I defended her honor, I lost mine. In that moment, I realized you can fight for love, but you can't win against ambition. This isn't a love story. It's the anatomy of a betrayal. I wasn't trying to fix big world problems or settle disputes in far-off places. Instead, I was focused on something that mattered deeply to me. I was trying to understand why the love had faded in our marriage. I thought it would be easy to figure out the reasons and just fix things. Like when my little daughter Kim says, "Make it all better," whenever she gets a cut and we put on a bandage. But repairing what was between my wife Sue and me would require more than just a simple fix. Still, I was committed to putting in my best effort. I didn't want to become just another statistic of couples getting divorced, but it seemed we were heading in that direction. Well, not if I could help it. From the outside, we looked like a typical happy couple. We had been married for almost 11 years and had 2 children, Kim, who is 6, and Danny, who is 8. Our family also included a 2-year-old golden retriever named Rusty. We lived in a large home that Sue was eager to buy, and unfortunately that came with a hefty mortgage. Sue works at a big accounting firm, Spencer & Thomas, based in Atlanta, and she was promoted to junior partner last January. She's incredibly smart and tends to work a lot when I don't keep an eye on her. As for me, I do custom paintwork on motorcycles and cars. My work isn't seasonal like Sue's, but it often varies. Sometimes it's busy, other times it isn't. Many weekends, I set up a tent at car or bike shows to attract jobs. Most of my new business comes through word of mouth. When one of my paint jobs wins an award, people always ask who did it, and the winner usually sends them my way or gives them one of my business cards. I'm very particular about the business cards I use, and I go through a lot of custom-painted ones each year. They may not be inexpensive, but I find them very worthwhile. After Danny was born, it became clear that Sue would be the primary earner in our family. She had greater earning potential, and it made financial sense for me to spend more time at home with the kids while she focused on her career. I didn't feel any loss of pride or question my role as a man. I simply wished she could earn even more. When our second child, Kim, arrived, I took on more responsibilities, especially around tax time. I became the main cook, cleaner, and school volunteer. When the kids started elementary school, I would drive them to school and often ended up picking up a couple of other kids from the neighborhood as well. I didn't mind at all. I simply adjusted my business hours to fit this new routine. I believed strongly that marriage is a partnership, and both partners need to contribute for everything to run smoothly. Sue worked hard, especially after her promotion, and her hours were long. She usually left home at 7:30 in the morning and often didn't get back until 6:30 or later. Many evenings I would have dinner ready for the kids and help get them ready for bed by the time she arrived home. After greeting her with a smile and something to drink, I would sit with her while she ate. Then I would help settle the kids down for the night while she took some time to relax. I never thought of myself as a martyr. I believed this is what 2 people who love each other do in a marriage. Did we have intimate moments often? Not really. It seems that most people might always wish for a bit more. It's common to desire more connection, regardless of how often it happens. And a guy who gets all the attention he wants on a regular basis? Well, we know that's just a dream, especially for couples with little ones. I remind myself to be grateful for what I have and to make the most of the moments I get. So our simple life continued. Things between us became tense, starting with Sue's promotion dinner a year ago. I still feel upset about her behavior towards me since that night. It feels like she takes me for granted, almost as if she thinks she's above me now that she's achieved a certain level in her career. If it weren't for our 2 kids, I might have thrown in the towel, but I'm not quite ready to give up. On the way back from a show in Atlanta, I decide to make one last effort, knowing there's still something worth saving if we both try. I think back to when we first got married. I was 22, and she was 23 and a half. I always joked that she married someone younger. She had just finished college and landed a job at a local accounting firm. I was running my business painting cars and motorcycles from my parents' old garage. I knew college wasn't for me, so I took all the auto paint courses at the technical college. I learned both basic painting techniques and airbrushing. Life was tight, but I was happy back then. I loved attending car and bike shows where there were impressive vehicles and amazing people. That's where I met Sue. She was dating a guy named Kenny who was showcasing his car at one of the regional events. For him, it was all about the car that day, while Sue was there to cheer him on, as girlfriends often do. However, with the show getting ready to start and him busy preparing, Sue seemed like an afterthought. I hadn't worked on her boyfriend's car, but had painted two others that I thought had a solid chance of winning. I was standing back, watching the excitement unfold when she walked up beside me. "Boys and their toys," she said loudly while sipping on a soda. "Excuse me? Look at them. They're spending so much money on what? A fancy paint job that will hardly ever see the light of day outside of these events?" I corrected her. "They're called car shows." "Whatever. It's just not practical, that's all." "If you're not interested in the cars, what are you doing here? You see that green Chevy over there? That's my boyfriend's. We brought it here with his custom truck. Boys and their toys, I'll never get it. And let me guess, he doesn't treat you as well as he treats his car, right? If he spent even a fraction of the time he spends shining that car on me, I'd be the happiest person alive. So I'm here to support my man, that's what he said anyway. What time does this thing end?" she asked, glancing at her watch. "Well, judging starts in about an hour and will likely take at least 2.5 hours given the number of cars entered. Then they'll tally the votes. You should be out of here in about 4 hours, give or take. You're kidding me, right?" "Sorry," I replied. She pulled out her phone, dialed someone, and began speaking emphatically. "He told me a couple of hours. No way am I waiting around all day, even if he thinks he's going to win. Just so you know, he probably won't take first place." "How do you know that? Are you one of the judges or something?" "Nope, but I painted 2 cars in the competition that look much better than his," I said with a smile. She didn't seem impressed. "And how much did you charge to paint those cars?" "4,000 to 5,000, I answered. "Each?" Now she sounded a bit more interested. "Yes, each. I even offered them 10% off if they would promote my shop and hand out my cards if they won. Like I said, I'll never understand guys and their hobbies." She finished her drink and placed her sunglasses on her head, revealing her big brown eyes. Looking a bit bored, she took them off, tied her shoulder-length light brown hair into a ponytail, and put her sunglasses back. "By the way, I'm Steve Moore," I said, extending my hand. "Sue Williams," she replied, giving my hand a light handshake. "Well, I need to find my boyfriend and let him know I'm heading to the mall while he does his thing. I'll come back to see how he did. I guess I owe him that much. Maybe I'll see you around. Here, take one of my cards." I pulled one from my pocket and handed it to her. "If he loses to me, you can give him the card and tell him I predicted it. He might want me to repaint his car." Sue looked at the card for a moment before slipping it into her back pocket. "Well, I guess I'll see you at the trophy ceremony." With a quiet sigh, she walked away. Not bad looking, but I wasn't really looking for anything more than a friendly chat. I chuckled to myself, thinking about how she looked as she walked away. She had a nice face and good posture. If she were a guy, they might say she was quite striking since she seemed to have a slender build and tall stature. She wore a casual shirt that left little to the imagination. I noticed her figure reminded me of a younger girl, but I shrugged it off. Her life choices were her own. It was a hot afternoon with few clouds in the sky, and by late afternoon my shirt felt damp against my skin. Sweat dripped down my face and along my back. I lifted my red cap, wiped my brow with my sleeve, and laughed at the thought of a sudden summer rain. Sue had mentioned that many of these cars would rarely see the sun, always parked in cozy garages or trailers, only brought out for events like this. I estimated there had to be over $1 million worth of cars here as I looked over the 8 rows of vehicles. One day, I wanted a custom car that would attract attention as I drove by. Would I drive it daily? Absolutely. What's the point of owning something special if no one saw it? I wasn't looking for a fragile trophy. I wanted something eye-catching. Right now, I didn't have a steady girlfriend and wasn't actively seeking one. But I glanced at some of the women around. They seemed too demanding. The guys had brought them here in their stylish outfits, posing next to their cars to draw a crowd. As I looked over at the 1968 Chevy belonging to her boyfriend, I noticed Sue still hadn't returned. Her boyfriend kept checking his watch, and he didn't seem too pleased with the wait. Well, at least I hoped he didn't win first place. That would be just fine with me. Once the judging was finished and the results were in, the presentation started. There were 4 classes, and the winners from each one competed for the overall best in show. One of my cars made it to the top 4, along with Sue's boyfriend's car and 2 others that looked fantastic. I didn't understand why they stretched out the awards ceremony so long. Everyone was hot, sweaty, and eager for it to end. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed Sue return and stand next to her boyfriend. "Let's get on with it," someone shouted from the back, and the crowd cheered in agreement. A striking 1964 Ford truck with a shiny candy apple red paint job took 4th place. I knew the guy who had painted it, and while he was smiling, I could tell he felt conflicted inside. A sleek black and red 2008 Corvette came in 3rd, and I had thought it would have a shot at 1st or 2nd. That left Sue's boyfriend's green Chevy and my friend's bright yellow Chrysler 300. As the anticipation grew, I could see the excitement on both owners' faces. When my friend's car won, he jumped around in celebration while Kenny, Sue's boyfriend, looked upset. The trophies for 1st and 2nd place were larger than necessary, but my friend was most excited about the cash prize for 1st place. He spotted me in the crowd, gave me a big hug, and headed up to the stage while everyone clapped and gathered around his car. I was excited too, knowing this would lead to at least 1 or 2 new painting jobs for me. I stood by my friend's car while a few guys approached me to talk about painting their vehicles. Sue's boyfriend didn't take the loss well. I saw him kicking at the ground, clearly upset. While I couldn't hear him, his expression told me he wasn't pleased. I caught a glimpse of Sue mouthing, "It's just a car show," right before he snapped at her. I then saw Sue hand him my business card, and he angrily ripped it into shreds and tossed it back at her. With her arms moving, she stood her ground. They both began to attract attention. I considered stepping in to help her, but decided it wasn't my place. I was chatting with someone about a 2006 Honda he wanted painted when I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Sue. "Do you mind if I stay here with you? My boyfriend is being really difficult, and I want to avoid him for now." "Not a problem. Sounds like he's upset about losing." When I mentioned what you told me and gave him your card, he accused me of fixing things. I probably shouldn't have said it's not the end of the world and that there will be more shows. After that, he ripped up your card and threw it at me. "I'll keep an eye out for you," I said while returning to my conversation about the Honda and giving him a rough estimate. I didn't notice when Sue wrapped her arm around me or when her boyfriend approached. The guy I was talking to definitely noticed, his eyes widening in surprise as he took a step back. "Sue, come on, we're leaving," Kenny shouted. "I'm not going with you. I don't want to be near someone who can't manage their anger or speaks to me like that." It seemed like he was ready to lose his temper further, and I felt I needed to protect her. I stepped in front of her. His face turned bright red as if he was about to explode. I held my ground, unsure of what he might do next. I was shorter and lighter than Kenny, and I was prepared for a confrontation when he surprised me. "Keep her! She's not worth the hassle!" he yelled, turning away and heading back to his car. I let out a sigh of relief as I relaxed, feeling the tension leave my body. "Boys and their toys," she murmured, watching as he drove off. "Well, now you need to give me a lift home. Are you almost done here?" she asked, standing with her arms crossed and peering at me through her large sunglasses. At that moment, I began to understand how Kenny felt. I was just relieved to have avoided any confrontations over this situation. "Can you give me a minute? I'm trying to handle some business," I replied, starting to feel a little annoyed. "Okay, I'll wait over there." She pointed to a set of bleachers beside the stage. "When you're ready to go, just let me know," she said before turning and walking away. I finished up in just over half an hour, having handed out 100 cards, feeling proud when I remembered Sue. "You about ready to go?" I asked with a slight smile. "I was ready to leave at 10 o'clock this morning," she replied. We walked over to the parking lot and climbed into my 2004 Chevy S10 pickup. It had 100,000 miles on it, needed a paint job, and really could use a wash. "You paint cars like that?" she said, pointing at a shiny vehicle leaving. "And drive something like this?" "It's my work truck. If you think it's beneath you to ride in it, you can always walk home." "I didn't say that." I just thought you'd be driving something nicer to show off your work. I can't afford my own paint jobs right now, nor do I want to. I put most of my money back into my business so I don't owe anyone. That's really smart. I guess when business is slow, you can manage it. Exactly. And since I still live at home, my expenses are low. I do have my eye on a little place, and in about 2 to 3 years, I should be able to afford it. Until then, I'm focusing on building my business, connecting with the right people, and improving with every paint job I complete. I can imagine this might have surprised her a bit. You thought I was just a simple guy without a plan, didn't you? She was quiet at first. Okay, I assumed you were just a typical country guy. My mistake. You really do have your future mapped out. What does your girlfriend think about it? Not much, because I don't have one right now. Are you applying for the position? If you are, I'm accepting applications. I gave Sue my best smile. I had his bright blue eyes, but none of the rest. I guess it didn't matter much to Sue, because a month later we were officially a couple. Imagine that. We were quite an unusual match. The careful college student and the hard-working painter, but it worked for us for some reason. Maybe it was because I treated her with respect and took the time to meet her needs. Whatever it was, our relationship grew, and we started expressing our feelings for each other and discussing our future. I know this may not be the greatest love story you've ever heard, but that's how we met and became a couple. Even though Sue had never been in a workshop, she understood the principles of running a successful business. I'd like to say my success came from hard work or a bit of luck, but that wouldn't be true. Sue encouraged me to grow my business and take chances I normally wouldn't have. Some didn't work out, but most did. She didn't even mind when we went out in my old truck. She did want me to keep my hands clean, which meant making sure there was no paint under my nails when we went out, especially with her friends. Sue, I'm just a regular worker. I work with my hands all day, so they tend to get dirty. I don't spend my time in an office like you. She looked at me with a serious expression. Steve, you may work hard for a living, but you don't have to look unkempt. You're also a successful business owner, and that means you should present yourself well. I'm not asking you to act differently. I just want you to remember that people see you in a new light when you're dressed nicely compared to wearing old jeans. Your friends, not mine. That was the heart of the issue. I never went to college, and most of my friends are like me, hard-working individuals making ends meet. Her friends, however, were educated and well-off, often only reaching out to me when they needed something done that they didn't want to handle themselves. When it was just the two of us, things felt completely different. We were in love, and that was what mattered most. I loved her for who she was, not what she had. She wasn't perfect, and sometimes she'd say things that irked me, but then we'd share a look and realize it didn't matter as long as we had each other. Her love was the most precious thing in my life. Our wedding best reflected the differences between our backgrounds. Her family had money, while mine did not. They never directly told me I wasn't good enough for their daughter, but her father suggested I should abandon my dreams of growing my painting business. He seemed to think if I failed, his daughter would have to take care of me. So I nodded and acted respectfully, trying to keep the peace. There were many times I had to bite my tongue during his lengthy discussions. "You okay?" Sue asked me after one of our family gatherings. "I thought you were going to get really upset at one point. For once, I'd like to see your dad step down from his pedestal and live like most people do. Steve, he started with nothing and built his business all by himself. He just can't understand why everyone else can't do the same. When he says a lot of small business owners are lazy, he really believes it. He worked non-stop until he succeeded, and now he's enjoying the fruits of his labor. He was really fortunate and had a father who helped him get started. I'm not saying he didn't work hard, but having connections certainly helped him too. If he wants to show off his money, that's his choice. He has earned that right. So what if he wants to spoil Danny and our new little girl?" she said while gently touching her belly. "It's just his way of trying to help us out. Plus, with another baby on the way, we'll have more expenses since I'll be taking time off work for a few months. But when I make partner, things will get easier and we won't need his support. You know I love you, right? That means everything to me. Now you're not being fair. You know I'd do anything for you. Besides, I enjoy this time with you." "And why is that?" "Because of the changes you've gone through. You've grown since becoming pregnant, and I'm appreciating every moment. I said with a chuckle as she playfully punched my arm. Well, you better enjoy this for the next couple of months because once this baby is born, we're done. We'll have our boy and girl. You'll have to get used to my regular figure again, like it or not. I made a fake pout. And there's absolutely no way I'm getting surgery. I like myself the way I am, the way you first fell for me, remember? Big or small, I'll love you no matter what, I said, gently touching her belly. And if you say we're done, I won't complain. You're my bride, and I will love you forever. It was a cheesy line from an old song, but it felt right. We were happy, and that was all I ever wanted in our marriage. 4 months after Kim was born, Sue returned to work with great energy. It seemed like she wanted to make up for the time she had spent at home. Some nights, I wondered if she would ever come home. Babe, you're working too hard. You need to take it easy, I said, showing concern as any loving husband and father would. I don't want to lose my position. If things go well, I could be up for a partnership by the end of next year. That will secure our future and we won't have to worry about money anymore. I thought we were managing just fine. We didn't have everything we wanted, but what couple did? I wasn't trying to keep up with anyone. We already had more than most of my friends. My business wasn't hugely successful yet, but it was growing each year. So I began taking on more responsibilities at home and with the kids as Sue's work hours continued to increase. When she became a partner, they held a big dinner in her honor. All the other partners, their spouses, and office staff were invited. It wasn't black tie, but it was a dress-up event. I wore my suit, the only one I had, and Sue bought a beautiful long dress. When she came down the stairs, she looked more stunning than I had seen her in a long time. I felt a strong desire to celebrate that evening and told her as much. Calm down. You'll have your chance when we get home tonight since Mom and Dad are watching the kids. For now, let's just get there safely, and later we can see what the night brings, Sue said, blowing me a kiss. The company's top partners were present, along with others from her regional office. It wasn't a roast, since everyone had nothing but kind things to say about her. Sue was one of 3 women junior partners, and I heard she was being prepared to become a senior partner eventually. Having a woman in a management role showed the other firms that the company was progressive and promoted from within. It also helped that she had a father who was wealthy and well-connected. The dinner was enjoyable, and there was an open bar. I made sure not to overindulge, but it seemed I was the only one. When there is an open bar, some people feel the need to get their money's worth. Let's just say the bartender had a busy night. Sue circulated and spent most of the evening speaking with one or more of the senior partners. She would glance over at me now and then, perhaps to make sure I wasn't feeling out of place. I didn't have much in common with the others, but I did manage to strike up a conversation with one of the senior partners about cars. He was from the corporate office in Atlanta, had a show car, and was genuinely interested in what I had to say. However, about 20 minutes later, my evening took a turn. Like I mentioned, some people shouldn't drink, or at least they should know their limits. That's when they start saying things that shouldn't be said out loud. I overheard a group of male junior partners talking, and if they hadn't been so loud and laughing, I might not have paid them any attention. I guess we know who makes the decisions in that family, one of them joked. I heard he does all the chores, takes the kids to school, handles the laundry, and cooks. I can't even get my wife to do all that for me, another replied. As a gentleman, I tried to ignore them. He's probably so laid back that she decides when they spend time together. They laughed openly and loudly. He probably tries to impress her when she gets home, hoping for some affection. But she's likely to turn him down. I was standing nearby when his friends suddenly went quiet and he turned around. For your information, my wife is tough enough to handle anyone, even on her worst days. I wouldn't mess with her if I were you. I wasn't thinking about anything so innocent, he said with a foolish grin. That grin quickly disappeared. A swift, non-violent move, and he was on the floor. His friends quickly left the scene. I knew I should have just walked away from the situation, but in that moment, all I wanted was to defend my wife's honor. Sue came over, clearly upset, while his friends tried to help him up. Sue, he was saying disrespectful things about you. I couldn't just ignore it. Don't you think I can take care of myself? You let a silly comment ruin my night. How could you? She quietly scolded me. I want you to apologize to him right now. Do you understand? She was right. It was her night. Swallowing my pride, I walked over to him. I'm sorry for what happened, but if you ever say anything about my wife again, you won't get off so easily." Unfortunately, instead of accepting the apology, he made another crude remark about Sue. This time, everyone around heard it. I glanced at Sue briefly and decided to end the encounter without further escalation. He wasn't going to get up by himself anytime soon. I left the banquet hall, got into our car, and drove home. I knew I was in for it when we got back, and I thought the fact that Sue was riding home with someone else might help her calm down. I was very mistaken. I was relieved I wasn't drunk when she got home, or things might have been worse. She yelled at me for over an hour, explaining how my outburst affected her reputation. "You must have heard what he said. Everyone had to have heard it. And you wanted me to just let that go? I don't care if he's insignificant. No one speaks about my wife like that. Does it matter if everyone heard what a foolish person was saying? Did his words hurt me in front of my bosses? Not at all, but your outbursts definitely did. Now people will be talking about the partner's husband who embarrassed himself at her promotion dinner. I can already hear them. They might say, 'We'd like to invite you both to the next dinner, but we're worried he might lose his cool again.' That's what I'll have to deal with now." "Fine. I won't attend any more of your fancy dinners if I embarrass you that much. He should be grateful I didn't make the situation worse. You're lucky he didn't file charges against you. If it hadn't been for one of the senior partners talking to him, you could be in serious trouble," she shouted. I walked away while she continued to express her frustration all the way to our bedroom. "I guess intimacy is out of the question tonight," I said jokingly. It didn't go over well. I ended up sleeping on the couch that night. I didn't go with her to pick up the kids, knowing she was still upset and would likely face her father's disappointment when he found out what happened. No matter what I did, I felt like I couldn't win this time. This began our downward spiral. From that night forward, the distance between us grew. She was right. She attended the dinners, but I wasn't invited, or at least that's what she told me. Sue started working longer hours, and when I voiced my concerns, she remarked that without her paycheck, we would struggle. "Mine," she added in a dismissive tone. I suppose she had a point. After that, I focused more on my work. If she stayed late, I brought the kids with me to the shop. I started teaching Danny about my job and showed him some of my projects. "Wow, Dad, did you paint this?" he asked, admiring a tank I'd just completed for a motorcycle. "It's beautiful." That made me feel proud. When Sue complained about taking the kids to my messy shop, I replied that if she came home at a reasonable time, I wouldn't have to. That silenced her for a moment, but she quickly found something else to criticize. Things were going downhill. One Saturday, after she returned home late, we had a major argument. If the kids hadn't come into our room upset, I think it would have continued longer. "Look what you did! You've upset the children!" she yelled at me. I felt incredibly frustrated. After that, I spent most weekends away from home, attending car and bike shows, trying to bring in new business. When I started using new computer graphics technology, my business improved by about 10%. Sue wasn't pleased when I bought an updated computer and software. I had reached a point where her opinions mattered less to me, and my personal life wasn't getting any better. I took Danny to a 2-day regional bike show where I displayed over 50 new drawings, along with 7 custom-painted tanks and 3 rear fenders. I created a few drawings I was proud of and spent a lot of time thinking about how to share them with a specific group I knew would be there. With my folder in one hand and my son in the other, I approached the toughest-looking person I could find. He was the leader of the Warmonger Motorcycle Club. Danny's eyes widened, and he stayed behind me. "Excuse me?" I said, making sure not to tap him on the shoulder. "My name is Steve, and I think you might be interested in something I've got." Right away, 2 large men stepped in front of me, making it clear that I should leave. I wasn't ready to back down that easily. "I noticed that the paint jobs on your bikes could use some improvement, so I thought you might want to see what a good paint job looks like." When one of the other members pushed me back and warned me to leave before things got rough, I almost gave in. I just thought that a person of your standing might like something on his bike to be truly proud of. I glanced back at the group of bikers who seemed ready to take action against me. Then I heard him say, "Let me see what you've got." I turned around, walked through the group, and handed him my folder. He looked through the first few pieces and smiled. I was surprised to see him smile. "You did these?" I nodded, telling him I created all my own designs. I could tell which one had caught his eye, a bold image of a biker on his custom motorbike. I was grateful that Danny hadn't seen it. It was a playful concept, reminiscent of a festive scene, but much more daring. The others began to look at my designs and share amused whispers. I handed him a couple of business cards and mentioned that I'd offer him a great deal if he was interested. I thanked him for his time, and before I could step away, he extended his hand and thanked me back. His name was Sid, not something like Badass or Mad Dog, as I had imagined. With a nervous Danny by my side, I walked back to our tent, aware that most people thought I was a bit crazy and fortunate to be okay. That took a lot of courage. Seriously, that took guts to do what you did back there. You know it was risky, right? What were you thinking? My friend Tim said, clearly shaking his head in disbelief. Everyone was bracing for an explosion. You wouldn't have jumped in to help me? I asked, trying to sound innocent. I would have made sure to save your son and told Sue you were just overwhelmed. She might have been upset because she'd have to find someone else to help with the kids. I probably shouldn't have joked like that in front of Danny, but he seemed to be getting over the shock of the day. I had taken on 3 challenging projects and 1 possible lighter job. Dad, did you know those people today? Danny asked as we were heading home. They're just some friends I haven't seen in a long time. Why do you ask? Well, one guy said we were going to get hurt talking to those tough-looking people. Well, did anything happen? Did we get hurt in any way? You see, you can't believe everything you hear. Dad, did you notice all the tattoos on their arms? Even the women had tattoos everywhere, he said, looking at my arms. How come you don't have any? Some of them looked really neat. I was glad to see Danny had bounced back. Dinner, however, did not go as smoothly. Mom, you should have seen us, he said before I could say anything. Dad just walked up to these guys and started talking to them. They were part of a group called the Warmongers. It was so cool. They had tattoos and everything. Sue turned to me, her expression stern. Steve, what were you thinking? Nothing happened. Look, we're still here. No one got hurt and we're perfectly fine. I just shared a couple of designs that I thought might interest them, that's all. Who are you meeting tomorrow? The Hells Angels? You should really think carefully about your choices, especially with our son around. I'm trying to build my business, if you don't mind, I replied, a bit sarcastically. Steve, your job is to look after the kids while I'm working. We agreed that I would be the main provider for the family. That was before you tried to undermine me and limit my role. My business is just as important as yours, partnership or not. So if you're going to be late again, you'll need to find a babysitter if you don't want me watching the kids. I stood up from the table. I was starting to take back my position. Sue wouldn't let me take Danny with me on Sunday, saying something about protecting our son. Business was slow that day, and I was getting ready to call it a day when I heard the sound of a group of motorcycles coming down the street. When they arrived at my tent, I wasn't sure what to expect. I've decided to take you up on your offer, Sid said as he got off his bike. I want the design with 6 women pulling the bike. I'd like it to start on the front fender and go along the full length of the tank. On the rear fender, I want a brunette depicted from behind. Just make sure the design looks appealing. I was thrilled inside. It wasn't going to be cheap, but since I had already done the artwork, I only needed to worry about materials and labor. We finally agreed on a price, but Sid said he wouldn't pay anything until it was completed. I accepted that. How long will it take? It should take about 2 weeks, give or take a day or so, but I'd prefer if you didn't see it until it's finished. He mentioned that he would drop off his bike at the shop tomorrow morning. I was feeling frustrated. I didn't mention anything to Sue. She was acting as though she was superior, and I was tired of it. And no, things between us weren't that great. We only got intimate occasionally, and lately I made sure she took the lead on that. The one time I turned her down, saying I had a headache, she slammed the bathroom door so hard it knocked a mirror off the wall. For the next 2 weeks, I spent nearly all my time in my workshop. When Sue called me for dinner, I told her to go ahead without me. She would get upset talking about family meals, but I reminded her about the past couple of years and how often she was away for dinner. Now, as a babysitter, she understood what I had experienced all those nights alone. I tackled a few issues in my project, but managed to finish with a day to spare. It looked so great that I really didn't want to let it go. Tim and I took countless pictures from every angle. I wish I could showcase this at the regional show in Atlanta next week, I told him. It would definitely take first place. The next morning, Sid came by with a couple of friends. "This is amazing," were the first words out of his mouth as he admired his bike, grinning broadly. "I can't believe you weren't joking. It looks incredible." He went on praising it for about 5 minutes. "This is worth every bit of the $2,000 it's going to cost me. It's a real masterpiece." "I have a favor to ask," I said, a bit uncertain. "What if I offered to do this paint job for free if you could help me out with something small?" "Depends on what you need," he replied, laughing with his friends. "There's a bike show in Atlanta this Saturday, and I'd like to display your bike." "No way, they don't really like me in Atlanta." "You don't have to be there, just your bike will do." "I'll do the paint job for free, and if you win, you'll earn another $1,500, he said, sparking interest. "You can have someone else ride it there and register it in your name, so you'll get the credit and the prize if you win." "Do you think it has a shot?" "What do you think?" He gazed at the bike with a smile. "Steve, let me think it over and get back to you," he replied as he mounted his bike and started it. He could have easily dismissed me and taken his bike, leaving me upset and out $2,000, but I was hoping for a better outcome. On Wednesday, my phone rang. "A friend will be riding the bike for me. I want you to meet them there and make it look great. I'm aiming for first place, if you catch my drift." That was all he had to say. I understood him perfectly. "Steve, we need to talk," Sue said when I saw her on Wednesday night. "About what?" I replied lightly. "What do you mean about what?" "About us and how our marriage is going." "What marriage? Right now I'm tied to someone who works all the time and has no respect for me," I told her, finally being honest. "But you know what? I don't care anymore." Deep down I did care, but I wasn't about to let her know that. "Maybe we could get away this weekend and, reconnect." "Sorry, I have other plans. How about next weekend?" She didn't seem pleased. "What could be more important than our marriage?" It's funny. I asked the same question a year ago at that promotion dinner when I tried to stand up for you. But I got shut down and told I was just a blue-collar worker. "Well, I have something more important to do this weekend than listen to complaints," I said, walking away from my surprised and upset wife. I kept my distance and focused on preparing for Saturday's show. I arrived early and was surprised to see a woman riding Sid's bike. She was covered in tattoos. "Are you Steve?" she asked. "Yes, that's me, and you are?" "Let's just say I'm a good friend of Sid's and leave it at that." I didn't ask for more details. "He wants you to register the bike under your name, not his. Sid said he doesn't want any attention or to be directly linked to this bike, if you understand." I did, and I had no problem registering it under my name. They must have transported it to the show because it was spotless, just like when it left my shop. It still needed a couple of hours of work, but we had time. I did my best. Now it was up to the judges. There were nearly 1,000 spectators, and I recognized some of the exhibitors, but I was surprised when one of the senior partners from Sue's firm approached. "Mr. Thomas," I said, extending my right hand as he walked up to me. "Steve, it's Bill," he said with a firm handshake. "This is what I call a great paint job," he remarked while walking around the bike, taking several pictures. "How long did it take you?" 2 solid weeks, I replied as I noticed the judge approaching with his clipboard. "You mentioned you did good work, but I had no idea it was at this level. Are Sue and the kids here with you?" "No, they're all back home. I want to apologize for the other night. I realize I acted out of line." He looked at me silently for a few moments. "It probably wasn't the best time or place, but I wish I had the courage to do what you did that night. That guy not only embarrassed himself, but also our firm." "I'm sorry, I need to apologize," he said to me. "Let's just call it even and move on," I suggested. We shook hands again. "Well, Steve, I hope you win, and please tell Sue I'm sorry I missed her. Your wife has a bright future with our firm, unless, of course, she gets too overwhelmed. Can you help with that?" After saying this, he walked away. Now that the judging was over, we only had to wait for the results. The girl who had brought the bike to Atlanta had changed into an outfit that highlighted her features along with her tattoos and piercings. She was sitting on the bike while several guys took pictures. No one was surprised when they announced that my bike qualified for Best in Show. However, the competition was tough, not just in terms of paint jobs, but also the bikes themselves. I wished we had registered it under Sid's name, Who would dare vote against him? As they announced fourth and third place, I held my breath. I wasn't even looking at the stage when they announced second place, but Sid's girl was. "Oh my goodness, we won!" she exclaimed. It took a moment. "Hello, Steve here." "Wow, sounds like you were right. I hear we won," Sid said. "Great job. Give everything to Donna and I'll see you Monday." He hung up, and I finally learned her name. I stayed for another hour, soaking in the excitement of the win. I knew I would likely make it into at least 2 magazines because of the press badges some photographers were wearing. I handed Donna the check and trophy and finally learned that she was Sid's younger sister. At nearly 5'9" and about 150, she was definitely not anyone's little sister. The 5.5-hour drive back from Atlanta felt like forever. I was wired, tired, and very hungry. I stopped at Denny's and enjoyed a hearty breakfast, which included 2 cups of coffee before getting back on the road. When my phone rang just after 10:30, it startled me because I had been deep in thought. "Where are you?" Sue asked. "About 45 minutes away." "Did you eat something?" she asked, sounding a bit concerned. "I stopped at Denny's, so don't worry. I'll be home around 11:30, give or take." "I'll wait up," she replied. "Sue, go to bed. I'll see you in the morning," I said a bit sharply. "Okay, just drive carefully then." It was the most pleasant conversation we'd had in months. I ended up stopping once more for a bathroom break and another cup of coffee. I got home just after midnight, still buzzing, but glad to be back. I took a quick shower and got into bed. From her breathing, I could tell she was awake, but I said nothing, waiting for her to speak first. She didn't, and we both fell asleep soon after. Sunday morning, I learned we were having a barbecue at her parents' house. Just what I needed, I thought, but didn't say anything. The evening was fairly nice until her father began talking about something he didn't really understand at the dinner table. Everyone tried to ignore him as usual. Sue was chatting with her mom. The kids had already finished their meal and left the table, which meant I was his only audience. I was looking at the nice tablecloth, the dishes, and everything else in the room when I finally lost my patience and stood up. "Sally," I said, addressing Sue's mother, "I really don't know how you've stayed married to this difficult man for 40 years, but you've certainly shown a lot of strength. If it were me, I would have left a long time ago." Everyone sat there, stunned. "Sue, the kids and I are leaving in 2 minutes, with or without you," I told her, placing my napkin on the table. I wish I could say this has been enjoyable, but I can't. "You can't speak to me like that in my own home," her father shouted, standing and glaring at me. "You're right, and I don't plan to come back here again. I'm sorry, Sally, but everyone has their limits, even family. Are you coming, Sue?" I asked her again. She remained seated, unmoved. "She's not going anywhere with someone like you. If it weren't for my daughter's job, you'd be living in a much worse place." "I warned her not to marry you, and I was right," Hank said, puffing out his chest. "Sue is just like her father. She knows what she wants and will go after it, no matter the cost." "Hank," I replied, turning to him, "I feel sorry for both of you. You may have a lot, but what do you really have? A wife who stays because she fears change and a daughter who will be alone in an empty house when I leave and take the kids with me. Then she'll truly be like you, alone and focused on her work." "Please leave my house," Hank shouted at me. "Gladly. I rounded up the kids from the living room and got them into my wife's 320i BMW. Sue, I'll leave the car at the house. Since you're rarely there, I'll email you the address so you won't get lost." I would have loved to speed away, but her car wasn't very fast. "Why didn't Mom come with us?" Danny asked once we were in the car. "She wanted to spend time with your grandparents." My phone started ringing shortly after, but I turned it off. "It's not safe to talk while driving," I told the kids and tossed the phone into the passenger seat. We packed just enough clothes for a few days. I explained that we were going to visit my parents. I had a nice car in the garage, but chose to take my work truck since it was mine and suited my lifestyle. "Mom, is it okay if we stay for a few days?" I asked. "Honey," my mom replied, sounding a bit concerned, "what happened this time?" "Mom, why do you always think I'm in trouble? I know I'm not perfect, but this time it wasn't entirely my fault." "Well, come on over and we'll figure it out." My parents' house was small, nothing like Sue's or even our own home. The kids would be sleeping on air mattresses in the living room, and I'd stay in my old childhood room. When I shared what had happened, my mom shook her head. My dad smiled. You handled it better than I would have in your position. I only wish I could have been there to add my thoughts. Come on, you both. That's your wife's father you're talking about. Regardless of how we feel about him, he is still her father. Not care for him? Mom, he's really difficult to deal with. I can't believe I waited this long to share my true thoughts with him. What about Sue? What will you do about her? She asked, standing there with her arms crossed. Mom, I'm done with her. It's always about her, and I'm tired of it. I've tried so hard to make things easier for her, but I've lost her respect in the process. She'll be happier without me, and I will be too. Son, do you really believe that? I nodded, but I felt unsure. You know, in the eyes of God, you two will always be connected. Well, it may be that way for him, but I just hope I can find a way to get custody of the kids. My dad chimed in. Steve, that's going to be tough. You may be a good father, but the court usually favors the mother. Your best chance might be joint custody. I didn't know a lot, but I suspected my dad was right, especially with her father's resources. By now, Hank was probably consulting with his lawyer about how to go against me. I felt trapped, and I knew it. Pride can be both beneficial and harmful, just like in my situation. Add in my stubbornness, and the results can be a real mess. Looking back over the past year, all I could think was, what a fool I was. Sue tried to call me all evening Sunday, but she was the last person I wanted to speak with. On Monday, I took my kids to school and even went around the neighborhood to pick up the other children I usually took. I made a note to call their parents tonight because today was my last day driving everyone around. I had put my business aside, and it was time to focus on me. Sid was waiting for me when I arrived at my shop. Do you have banker's hours or something? He joked. I wasn't in the best mood, but I didn't want to upset him. I told you your bike would do well. I hoped for a win, but I would have been happy with second place, I said. Did you see the size of the trophy? Plus, your sister received the first place check. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Maybe we should head inside, he said, gesturing to the door. I unlocked it, turned on the lights, and brought out 2 chairs. The check is made out to you, and I want you to keep it. You did the work, and it's only fair that you get paid for it. I have an amazing paint job, and whenever someone asks me about it, I'll tell them where it came from. 2 of my friends saw your work and want you to do custom paint jobs on their bikes. They're not as fancy, but still nice. I gave them your card, so expect a call. I'd appreciate keeping this quiet if you don't mind. We prefer to keep our work to ourselves if you catch my drift. No problem. Just have them pay me in cash and it won't come up again. You seem like a nice guy and do great work. You're not afraid of us like most people. Why is that? This is just business. You've got your life and I have mine. If we can help each other, that's great. He smiled, we shook hands, and 2 minutes later he was gone. At least I got more from the deal than I expected. I kept my phone off for the next 3 days and let my voicemail handle work calls. Each night when I went to my mom's, she would scold me for not calling Sue. Steve, you're being stubborn. Call your wife and sort this out. You have 2 kids, remember? I knew I had 2 kids, but after everything I had gone through, I wasn't ready to go back to being the submissive version of myself from the past year. If Sue was capable, she should handle the challenges I had been facing for the past couple of years. For about 2 weeks, I called my kids around 3:30 most days, finding a way to work around one babysitter or another. They mentioned they missed me, and that their mom was often upset. That wasn't new to me. They asked when I'd be home, and I told them I didn't know, but that I loved them very much. I was sanding a gas tank when a girl walked through the front door. She was short and cute, looking for someone named Steve. My schedule had been filling up with inquiries lately. I'm Steve. How can I help you today? I greeted her with a smile. You've been served, she said, looking almost apologetic before leaving. I hadn't expected that, at least not this soon. I placed the papers on my desk and returned to work. I had 3 projects to prep that night before I left, and it looked like it would be a long evening. I didn't finish much before 11 o'clock. I was just finishing my coffee when my mom walked into the kitchen. Good morning, honey. What time did you get home last night? Late, I replied simply. Try to come home a little earlier tonight. I'm planning to make meatloaf with all the trimmings, and it's not as good reheated in the microwave. I'll do my best, I said, giving her a kiss on the forehead. I managed to get home just in time, but the next 3 nights were just as late, if not later. I was practically living at my shop and always made sure to have a change of clothes and a stocked refrigerator. You might wonder if I looked at the papers. I never opened them. I knew she had at least one high-powered lawyer, probably 2, and I had just enough money to cover my expenses and save a little for my kids. In the following 2 weeks, I received 2 more deliveries from the same legal office. I did notice one thing, though. The packages were getting heavier. "When were you going to tell me?" my mom asked as I walked through the door. "Tell you what?" "About the divorce." "Oh, I guess that's what's in those large envelopes I've been receiving," I said, grabbing a drink from the refrigerator. "You haven't opened them?" "Mom, what's the point? If she wants a divorce, she's going to get one, whether I want it or not. Her father can hire the best lawyers, so if that's what she wants, I'd be a fool to fight it." "Haven't you at least tried to talk to her?" "Mom, what's the point? I did my best, and I guess it wasn't enough for her. I'm done trying to be perfect. It's my time now." "How about your kids? Don't you think Danny and Kim deserve to have a say in what happens?" "I talk to them a couple of times a week. Don't you think I know it's going to be hard on them? But I think it'll be harder if we keep living like this." Mom knew I was right. I didn't want a divorce, but I felt like I had run out of options. Sue had chosen her work and Dad over me, and I couldn't stay in that situation. The following night, I was taking a break when the phone started to ring. I wasn't going to answer it. I was going to let my machine pick it up. But I thought, what the heck? I couldn't hide from her forever. "Sue, what do you want?" I asked, trying to keep my annoyance in check. "Steve, I know you got the papers. You were supposed to respond within 72 hours, she said, sounding frustrated. "I've been pretty busy lately. I haven't had a chance to look at them yet." "You haven't even looked at them?" "Steve, it's been over 3 weeks. And your point? Look, if you want a divorce, just go ahead. I won't fight it. Just let me know when it's all done and when I can see my kids, that's all." "Don't you even care about us? Don't you even miss me a little?" I could tell she was crying. "Sue, think about it. How many nights were you home for dinner over the last year, and when you were there, you often seemed distracted. The kids and I have adjusted to life without you. You focused on your work, and I took care of the home. The kids missed out on having both parents involved. I don't want to argue anymore. I'm just exhausted. Do what you want, and let me know when it's officially over." I could hear her crying in the background. Did I still love her? Maybe, but it had been so long since we were happy together. Perhaps we could try again, but I couldn't do it alone. At some point, she started to say something, but then stopped. "Sue, can I speak to the kids?" "Steve, I'm not at home. I'm still at work." "Of course, nothing ever changes, does it?" I hung up and called my kids. 3 significant things happened over the next week that would greatly affect my life, although 2 of them I didn't learn about until later. Sue was having dinner with her parents in their formal dining room. "Steve really said that?" her father asked. "This is going to be easy. We'll take everything he's got and maybe even secure some alimony for you," he said, laughing. "Hank, enough!" Sally shouted, slamming her hands on the table. Sue and Hank looked at her in shock. "Hank, after 40 years of marriage, if I didn't have such patience, I would have left you long ago." "Mother!" Sue exclaimed, surprised. "Sue, my only regret is that I didn't step in sooner when you started acting just like your father. You've become a self-centered and arrogant person, and it makes me feel uncomfortable to call you my daughter." Hank stood up and said, "Sally, that's enough." "Hank, please sit down. Sweetheart, whether you believe it or not, your father is completely wrong about Steve. You were the fortunate one in your marriage, not him. You should have appreciated what he did for you, but you, like your father, didn't see the good in it. That man put his career on hold to support you, and when he defended you, you criticized him as if he did something wrong. I'm sorry to say that you and your father are very similar. Just like you, he was often absent. How I ended up pregnant with you remains a mystery to me. Honestly, I thought I would need to ask his brother for help because he was never around. So go ahead, get your divorce, blame him if you want. But he was right about one thing. When the kids grow up a bit, they'll choose him over you, and all you'll have left is an empty house, a good job, and memories. Don't repeat the mistakes I made. With that, I've lost my appetite and I'm going to my room alone," she said, looking sharply at her husband. They both watched as Sally left the room. "I think your mother has had too much to drink." "Dad, she wasn't even drinking." Sue replied, still surprised by what had happened. 2 days later, more news arrived. An email came from the corporate offices in Atlanta sent by Mr. William Thomas, one of the senior partners. I'd like to congratulate one of our junior partners on her husband's victory at the Atlanta Regional Bike Show last month. Sue's husband, Steve, created one of the most impressive paint jobs I've ever seen. While it may not have been to everyone's taste, it was truly a work of art, and he deserves recognition for his efforts. The board is even considering sponsoring him at next year's Atlanta Auto Show and having him update the company logo. Attached are pictures of the winning paint job. However, if you are uncomfortable with certain images, please do not open the attachment. Sue looked at the screen without blinking. She opened the attachment and viewed the pictures taken. If she didn't know any better, she could have sworn the girl on the front fender looked a lot like her, but with a noticeable difference. Connie walked into Sue's office and closed the door. He doesn't know about your divorce from Steve, right? Connie, no one here knows except you. What are you going to do now? Connie, I'm not even sure what I want to do about my own divorce. I thought I knew everything, and now I'm not even sure what to ask. If only he would talk to me for once. If it were me, I'd just go see him. That way he can't just hang up. I don't even know what to say anymore, even if he would talk to me. Just tell him you've had a tough time and you want to sort things out. That tends to work. I think it'll take more than that this time, Sue replied, closing her briefcase. As I mentioned, 3 things happened. I received 2 more packages by special delivery. How much paperwork does it take to undo the words "I do" anyway? However, these weren't from Sue's attorney. The first one was from Easy Rider magazine. It presented the layout and the byline that would appear in next month's issue about the Atlanta show. The article featured a picture of me with the trophy and one of Donna with the bike, labeled Beauty and the Beast. It mentioned that a warmonger's bike had won Best in Show and even called out Donna by name. It seemed more than one person recognized who she was. I was in trouble. The article from Iron Horse magazine was similar. Both said what a great paint job I'd done, but mentioned that a member of the warmonger motorcycle gang owned the bike. If Donna had just stayed in the background, no one would have ever known. Now it would be out there for everyone to see. So much for keeping it a secret, and I knew Sid would not be happy about this. I decided to leave early and was getting ready to lock up when Sue's BMW pulled into the parking lot. Just what I needed. Another surprise today. Steve, if you've got a minute, I'd like to talk to you. She was dressed in a 3-piece suit, looking both sharp and professional. I'm surprised. I thought it would take a couple more months to finish everything up. I guess when you've got resources, things can move pretty fast, I replied, trying to get a jab in before she could tell me how things had gone poorly in court. Can we talk like 2 adults without the jabs this time? Sue, come on in. I just want to make sure we get through this without any pain. I kept teasing and she frowned. I was joking, you know. Remember when you would have laughed at that? She glanced over at my desk. You still haven't opened those up, have you? Nope, no reason to. Want something to drink? I've got water and maybe a Coke, but it's regular, not diet. You got a beer? That surprised me. 2 Coronas coming up. I went to the fridge and handed her one, taking a big gulp of the other before I spoke. Now that we've got the small talk out of the way, what do you need? I've stopped the divorce proceedings, she said, taking a sip from her bottle. So what does that mean for me? I've moved on and I'm pretty happy right now, I shot back, trying to regain my footing. My business is doing well. I have my work featured in 2 magazines next month, and it feels like everything is falling into place. So, you don't miss our old life? Me and the kids? She asked. The kids? Yes. You? Not so much, I responded, trying to sound casual. How could I miss someone who was often absent and focused on themselves? I know I made mistakes and I probably deserve that, but that doesn't mean I didn't care for you. I still do, she replied softly, her eyes glistening as she took a sip of her drink. How can you care for someone you don't see as equal? I valued you, but I didn't always treat you that way. Not always? Come on. You tried to take control, and for a long time I let it happen. I thought it'd be better for the family if I just went along with it. But then things changed when I finally stood up for myself. Can we please leave my father out of this? He has his own issues. Sure, I said, a grin creeping onto my face. But seriously, what do you want? I want to try again, she said earnestly. I can't do that. We've been through too much. Sue, you don't understand what kind of relationship I'm looking for. The days of me being at your service are over, I said, my voice rising slightly. Can't you help me become the partner you want? Can't we at least give it a chance? I believe you still have feelings for me, and what would it hurt to try? If it doesn't work out, we can simply move on. Sue, you need to realize what you're asking. I won't return to how things were, I said, truly reflecting on the situation. It has to be on my terms. Our terms, she quickly corrected. I'm not going to lose myself in this either. We're either equal partners or it's nothing, I said, thinking it over. Well, I need to pick up the kids now. Dinner is at 6:30 if you're interested. They would love to see you, but it's totally up to you. No pressure, she replied. Yeah, right, no pressure, I thought. She took a couple more sips from her drink, put it down, leaned over to give me a quick kiss on the cheek, and left. Curiosity got the better of me, so I showed up at 6:20. Let's eat, I declared. Sue and I didn't talk much as the kids filled me in on everything happening in their lives. I guess they weren't sure how long I would be around, so they wanted to share it all with me. I offered to help Sue with the dishes, but she said the kids came first. After finishing our meal and catching up, I helped get them ready for bed, more like wrestling with them until they wore themselves out by 9 o'clock. After giving each a goodnight kiss, it was lights out. Sue was in the kitchen with a glass of wine when I walked back in. With how energetic they were, I'm surprised you got them to sleep, she said. I just did what any responsible parent would do. I calmly showed them who's in charge. She smiled at that. Have you made any decisions yet? She asked, perhaps anticipating that I might want a divorce. I have some conditions that need to be met before I can decide, I replied, pulling out a full-page list from my pocket. I typed it up because you might not be able to read my handwriting, I said as I handed it to her across the table. She smiled after reading the first few items, but looked a bit surprised when she got to the more serious ones. I can agree to everything except the last item. They're my parents, and even though you and my dad don't see things the same way, she began before I interrupted, I really don't like him. Like I said, even though you and my father disagree on many matters, he is the grandfather of our children, and I won't cut them off from him. You don't have to come with me, but I'll let the kids visit him. And if he's not allowed in our house for now, I can accept that. My conditions were reasonable, just sensible things that most married couples would agree on, but we weren't quite like most married couples, not yet anyway. Are you spending the night or going back to your mom's? Sue asked softly, and her eyes showed that she was hoping I would stay. Do you want me to stay? What do you think? She replied. Well, then just ask me. Why don't you? What do you mean, ask you? I shouldn't have to ask my husband to spend the night with his wife. Sue, we haven't really acted like a true husband and wife for over a year. It seems more like a master and servant situation. So I'll say it one more time. If you want me to stay, all you have to do is ask. Sometimes it's frustrating how things can be. Fine. Stephen Moore, would you like to spend the night with your wife, Susan Moore? She said it with genuine intensity and a touch of sarcasm. See, was that so hard? Yes, I'd love to spend the night. Thank you for asking. Really? She muttered under her breath, and it didn't sound too pleased. Since most of my clothes were still in the house, I took a long shower, shaved, and found something decent to wear. I half expected Sue to join me in the shower, but figured she was still a little annoyed with me. Well, we had plenty of time to connect again once she got into bed. From my spot on the bed, I could see her in the bathroom. She washed her face, flossed, and brushed her teeth, and when I saw what she was wearing, my heart calmed down. She had on an oversized t-shirt, crew socks, and comfortable underwear. Her hair was styled in a simple bun on top of her head. What? She asked, noticing my expression. Nothing, I replied, turning away. I hadn't anticipated an intimate evening, but a little playfulness would have been nice. It seemed that things hadn't changed much, at least not yet. Look, we need to address some real issues before we can enjoy our time together again. I don't want you back just for a quick fling. I want my husband back, and you want a fresh start, which won't happen overnight. So if you're looking for something brief, that's available, she said, lying back. But if you're hoping for more, like I am, it's going to require more than just one dinner at home. She gave me a kiss, and I held her until the kids jumped on the bed in the morning. My kids were thrilled to have breakfast with me again. "Can you take the kids to school this morning?" she asked. "Of course I'd love to," I replied. At least she asked this time. "Don't worry, I'll be home in time tonight. I'm planning to pick up Chinese food on my way back from work if that's okay with you. I don't have any other plans tonight, so that should work." I noticed her expression, but chose to ignore it. It felt like starting over was going to be more challenging than anticipated. When she gave me a quick kiss goodbye and walked out, I called after her. I could use more warmth than I'm getting. When our child asked what I meant, she walked over and gave me a sweet kiss. Now that was a proper goodbye. "I joked that I might need to pay a good amount for a service like that," I said to her, but she didn't find it funny. It was clear that this wasn't going to happen right away. After dropping the kids off at school, I opened my shop and saw I had 2 messages already. One was about the progress of a job I had started, and the other asked to hold a spot for him around 9:30. He didn't leave a name, so I assumed he was looking for a quote. I could hear the motorcycles over the sound of my air compressor. I paused my work, cleared my equipment, and waited for them to come in. The first man who entered was quite large, with a friend who was shorter but nearly as wide. "Can I help you?" I asked. "I think Sid mentioned we would be here," the shorter man replied. They weren't in their usual attire, but they still had an intimidating presence. "Got it," I said, regaining my focus. "What kind of painting are you looking for?" "Why don't you show us what you can do?" the taller one suggested. "Sure, come over here and I'll show you my portfolio," I said, motioning them to my computer. I clicked on my file of pictures. "Just click the down arrow to see more. I have about 125 images. If you need me, I'll be at my paint booth." I pointed to my workspace. I was applying a clear coat on a fender when they called for me. I cleaned my equipment again and wiped my hands before walking over to them. "You've done some nice work here," the taller man said, looking at the screen. One of the images featured a tall redhead with a snake. "I want her to be a blonde and more defined." "Sure, I can do that," I replied. His friend was interested in a custom paint job as well. No pictures, no flames, just a blue and black metallic paint job. Thank goodness I got an easy one for a change. I sent them a price, and neither one flinched. I probably could have charged more. I told them I'd do one at a time, needing a week for the paint job and about 5 days for just the tank design. "If you want to drop off the tank, I might be able to get it done quicker. If you take apart and put together the bike, I'll reduce my price by 25%. Both agreed to those options. Now the challenging part. "I need to reach out to Sid or Donna. There are some things I think he should know," I said to the 2 of them, watching as they exchanged glances. "He can call me or come to the shop, but I need to talk to him soon. Just let him know it's about the Atlanta show." I handed them each another card. Maybe Sid wouldn't care, but I didn't want him to be caught off guard, especially since I had some information. Dinner was nice, and the kids weren't as wild tonight. Since it was Friday, they got to stay up later, so we all watched a movie together in the living room. I enjoyed Harry Potter, and it was my kid's favorite. I think Sue found it a bit childish, but she seemed at least somewhat interested. By 10 o'clock, the movie was over. We cleaned up the snacks, and everyone headed upstairs. I had an inkling that Sue might come out in something a bit different than the previous night. I wanted to be close to her, but this time I decided I would let her take the lead. I had started wearing a new type of protective glove at work, so my hands were cleaner now. They weren't perfectly smooth, but they were much better than before. When I found her waiting on the bed for me tonight, I was a little surprised. I was flipping through the latest issue of Iron Horse, looking at the featured motorcycle of the month, when Sue caught me by surprise. In the nearly 10 years I had known her, she had rarely taken the initiative like this. It reminded me of a time after a party at a friend's house, where we were one of 10 couples attending. Sue, as usual, was dressed modestly, keeping up her reputation. However, when a couple of my friends' wives made some playful remarks, Sue started drinking a bit more than usual. She didn't say anything, but became visibly tipsy. On the way home, she asked me if I found her as attractive as those other women. "Babe, you're my wife, the mother of my kids, and I love you dearly," I reassured her. She mumbled something about them having larger figures, and I couldn't help but chuckle. I told her she had the most adorable features, which seemed to comfort her a bit. When we got home, I carried her into the house and helped her get settled. We spent some time together, reconnecting and sharing affection. We moved to the bed and had a heartfelt moment that reminded me of how much we cared for each other. I wished I had remembered the night before more clearly because when morning came, she didn't recall much. I hoped for a similar moment tonight. "If you put that magazine away, maybe we could spend some time together," she said, moving closer. She wore a comfortable outfit, and I appreciated her relaxed demeanor. There's a time for jokes, but the bedroom isn't usually the right place for them, especially when your partner is giving you that look. We were getting cozy when I decided to make a little joke. I must have been a bit foolish to do that. As we shared a tender moment, I probably shouldn't have said what I did. "Oh, Donna, that feels nice," I whispered in her ear. She stopped and looked shocked while I had a silly grin. "It was just a joke, Sue," I said. But she didn't find it funny and hit me with a pillow 3 times. Through gritted teeth, she asked, "Who is Donna?" I tried to explain, but she was clearly upset. "This is Donna," I said, showing her a photo from a manila envelope next to my bed labeled Beauty and the Beast. Sue recognized the bike from an email Bill had sent from Atlanta, but his pictures hadn't included Donna. Now here she was. "So, this is what you did in Atlanta? You met someone there?" she asked, examining the photo closely, even turning on the overhead light to see better. "You prefer women like her more than me? Some men just lose their sense at certain moments." "Sue, think about it. I married you, didn't I? I'm unable to say she's not captivating, but my heart belongs to you. Still, if you ever got a tattoo in that area, you'd look even more attractive. In your dreams! I appreciate my body just as it is, and if you're not impressed, I can think of many who would be." She definitely gave it back to me. "So, should we try this again? Or do you have more silly comments?" I decided to stay quiet this time, at least until I was more comfortable with the situation. We both realized it would take time to return to where we were, but at least we made some progress. "I have an hour's work at the shop this morning," I told Sue during breakfast on Saturday. "I need to prep 2 tanks for Monday." "Why don't we all go this morning and then hit the mall afterward? I haven't seen you work in so long, and it makes sense to go there first, since the mall is on the way," she suggested. I agreed. I was busy sanding the 2 gas tanks when I heard the bikes pull up. Sue was moving around the office, and Kim and Danny were playing games on my computer when Sid entered, looking serious. I had brought the magazine layouts back to the shop and wasn't sure how to tell him the news. "Good morning, Sid," I greeted him cautiously. "I heard about it, but I understand you have the layouts," he said. I walked to my desk, picked up the envelopes, and handed them to him. "Wow!" he exclaimed, not quietly. Just then, Sue walked out of the office. Sid opened the door and called out, "Donna, come in here." Donna entered the room dressed casually, showing a bit of her outfit. I watched Sue trying to understand what was happening. "You really had to get in the pictures, didn't you? Now everyone will see them. No matter where I go, people will know because you couldn't keep off my bike," Sid complained, standing next to me and glaring at the others. "Sid, it's not like you don't have another bike," Donna shot back. "Great. Now what am I supposed to do with this one? Anyone who sees it will be looking for me," he replied. "I don't need the attention that comes with it." "Why don't you sell it to us?" Sue suggested, observing their argument. "Sell the bike to my husband, and he'll tell both magazines that he owns it. That way you keep your privacy and we have something for the shows." "Sue, please stay out of this." I was taken aback by her suggestion. "How much is it worth? 10 to 15,000? "Sweetheart, I spent 25,000 just on customization," Sid retorted. "Well, we can offer you 25, and Steve will do another paint job on your other bikes at no cost. But this time, we won't promote it." Everyone turned to look at Sue. "It's a good deal for everyone. We all get something without anyone being left out." I noticed our kids were standing just behind their mother, waiting to see how this would unfold. I liked the idea of buying Sid's bike, but I wondered what he thought. "Can you design something like what you did before?" "Anything you want," I replied with a smile. Sue continued her conversation with Donna. It took over an hour to sort out the details about the exchange and paperwork. In the end, I knew I would have to create something unique to make up for the issue Donna had caused. "Did it hurt?" My daughter Kim asked Donna as she gently touched the designs on her stomach. Just a little, Donna replied with a smile. You have a lot of them, and my mommy doesn't have any, Kim said, curious about her mother. If you'd like, I could take your mommy with me and we could give her some lovely designs too. I could see Sue's expression from across the room. That wasn't likely to happen, at least not anytime soon. Once everything was settled, Sid left with Donna on their other bike. I rolled in the new addition to our family and just stared at it. It was mine. I don't see what's so special about this bike aside from the paint, Sue said as she swung a leg over it. It was a custom shovel head with a rigid frame. It had a Springer front end and 3-spoked mag wheels both front and back, along with California handlebars. The bike featured only a tachometer and speedometer, but the high handlebars made me a bit concerned. I had only ridden a bike with them once, and after about half an hour my arms felt exhausted. The passenger seat was minimal, just a simple pad attached to the back fender, and it was all mine. Look, a picture of Mommy, Kim exclaimed, pointing at the image on the front fender. No, sweetie, that's not Mommy, Sue replied, looking at the image of a woman in a swimsuit on the fender. After a moment, she did a double take. Wow! I felt the heat on my cheeks. Okay, the hair was longer, and Sue certainly didn't share the features of that woman, but Kim was right. It was Sue's face I had used for the design. I had taken an old picture of her and added some flair. Is this really how you see me? She looked at me and asked, Is this how you'd like me to look? I think I would skip the harness, I replied. Sue couldn't take her eyes off the picture and finally admitted it looked appealing in a daring way. Gradually, we found our way back to a routine. I focused more on my work while she reduced her hours. Was everything perfect? Not at all, but neither of us was willing to give up. On Thursday night, Sue mentioned that the kids would be spending the weekend with her parents, something about theme parks and the beach. I need you to be home on time because you're taking me to a new restaurant for dinner tonight, she said. I sighed. The last thing I wanted to do was get dressed for dinner at the end of the week. But I gathered my thoughts, smiled, and told her I would be delighted to take her out for dinner, with just a hint of sarcasm, but a genuine smile, too. I certainly wasn't going to test my luck, especially with a kid-free weekend ahead. I had been riding my new bike to work most days, and today was no different. On my way home, I stopped for gas, and everyone admired my bike and the paint job. I always made sure to carry business cards since Sue discovered a way to write off the bike as a business expense. When I pulled into the garage and walked into the kitchen, I was taken aback by what I saw. There stood the most striking woman I had ever seen. She had long brown hair in a ponytail, stylish shorts, knee-high leather boots, and a top that was just right. Adorned with tattoos, she sipped on a drink and stood confidently in my own kitchen. I walked up to her, took the drink from her, and had a sip before pulling her into my arms and sharing a kiss. We arrived at Shady Oaks, and the group of bikers couldn't help but stare. They gathered around my bike as I led my date inside to a quiet table in the back. We enjoyed our burgers, shared a couple of beers, and she mentioned she was eager for dessert, lightly brushing her leg against mine. On the ride back, she hugged me tightly, and I could feel her warm embrace. When we got to my place, she hinted at something special she had in mind. She perched on the kitchen table, ready for what was next. We shared an intimate moment there in the kitchen, her warmth comforting me. Things became more intense as we moved together, and the connection between us grew. She was passionate, and we matched each other's energy, losing ourselves in the moment. Afterward, we relaxed together, feeling content. She leaned in, showing her affection once more, but we both knew we needed a bit of time before we could continue. I gently kissed her on the cheek and suggested we relax together. She took my hand and led me to the shower, helping me unwind and making sure I was fully refreshed. We then moved to the bed where we shared a light-hearted moment, enjoying each other's company and feeling the connection between us. "Did you enjoy that as much as I did?" she asked. "Even more," I said, giving her a kiss and running my fingers through her hair. We talked about the unique designs she had on her skin, wondering how long they would last. "They might stay for a couple more days, depending on how often they get wet," she said with a smile. We continued to chat about our evening, laughing about the attention we got when we were out. "They sure were looking at us," I said with a grin. But remember, next time let's keep it classy. You're my partner, and we should show that proudly. Maybe we'll even take some pictures to capture the moment. Not happening, she joked. Oh, and don't forget, tomorrow is an important night. We'll need to dress up and make a good impression. It's clear that when we work together as a team, good things happen. We're back on track, and we're both committed to making this work. We've returned to the way things were when we first met, bringing back the spark that had been missing. We have come to understand what truly matters in our lives and make decisions together for the well-being of our family. I have no doubt that we will succeed, especially after she said she would leave her job if it meant choosing between it and our relationship. When my friends ask me what I see in her, I tell them that I see a dedicated wife and mother, along with a strong, adventurous spirit beneath her professional appearance. They think I'm crazy, and maybe they're right, but I wouldn't change a thing now that I have the woman back who used to mix up a flea market with a car exhibition. Hey, listeners, if you enjoyed watching this video and want to stay updated with our latest content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss out on what's coming next. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video with Queen Cheating Tales.